am a member of the Sister Cities Committee of Hanover Park, and we are pleased to bring you a presentation today. Our presentation today will be called Black Economics, the Attack on Black Wall Street. That keynote address will be given by Dr. Reverend Otis Moss III. At this time, I'm going to bring up our chairperson, Pamela Fowler, to give us the welcome. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, I wanted to say I'm so delighted to have you all come into our presence today and to enjoy what we have for you. It is our, I guess about our 8th Black History Month event, and we have, as he mentioned, the Reverend Moss. We have some dancers, or one dancer, and we have a soloist and our organist. So we're very proud of what we have going on here today. So it gives me great pleasure to have all of you here. I would just like to tell you a little about Sister Cities. Sister Cities, we are Hanover Park Sister Cities Committee, and we have 2 sister cities. One is Cape Coast, Ghana, West Africa, and the other is Cape Coast, Ghana. I'm sorry, the other is Valparaiso, Zacatecas, Mexico. And with our Cape Coast, Ghana, actually we're taking a trip there. The committee is traveling in August, late August, early September, to Ghana. It will be my first time, and others, committee members, it'll be their second or third time. So we're very excited about that. In Cape Coast, Ghana, we have what's called it's a domestic shelter without walls. And so what we do, a domestic violence, so we provide a canvas over a seating area for victims of domestic violence, and they are waiting to see the chief. We had a school named after us, a primary school called Hanover Park Primary, but after COVID, it kind of like fell apart, so we are hoping to bring that back up again. And then we do have a ward, a West Wing ward for children's in the hospital, a children's ward with toys and stuff. And so what we're doing over there is great stuff, and I'm really excited about it and very excited to go visit and see how it looks. We have our original person, Frank Grand Aqua, who is from Ghana, and he's been with the organization for 32 years. We have been in existence for 32 years here in Hanover Park. Our second committee is Valparaiso, Zacatecas, Mexico. And with that, we do some great things with them. We have a real successful pen pal program. And in that program, we connect with some of the Hanover Park schools here, and we go back and forth with the pen pal program, and our goal is to eventually, at the end of the year, do a Zoom call that the children are able to interact with the other children in Ghana. Not Ghana, in Valparaiso, Zacatecas, Mexico. We used to have a pen pal program in Ghana. But anyway, so these are some of the things that we're doing, and if anyone is interested in becoming a part of our committee, please sign up or let myself know, or any one of the members here, let them know that you're interested. Now, next, what I would like to do is introduce the committee. And I'm going to start with Herb Porter, and I ask you to stand up, please. And Herb Porter is a very supportive member of our committee, and he is also the village trustee, and he is also our deputy mayor. Okay? We have Frank Grand Aqua, and Frank is our OG. Frank is the chief. He's a chief in Cape Coast, Ghana, West Africa. We also have James Kemper, and James Kemper is a former trustee of the village. He just resigned this year. Yeah, so he's a part of the Sister Cities. We have Jessica Ramirez. She's not here. Darius Robinson. Darius is a member. We have Gurmeet Sai, who is not here. Teresa Smith-Waits. She is our newest member, along with her husband, Michael Waits, and he's downstairs, but he's here as well. We have our auxiliary member, which is Adelaide Granacqua, Frank's wife. Yeah. And those two, his wife and himself, met our former chairperson, Linda Packman. And is it Packham? Thank you. And this started about 32 years ago. And so this is where we are now. We had a big celebration for our 30th year. So this is where we are. Now, I would like to introduce our trustee liaison, and that's John Kunkel. And our staff liaison is Catherine Perez. And she is the one out front that you gave your names to. Hopefully everyone got their raffle ticket. We have several gifts that we're giving out with the raffle tickets. Okay. For our trustees, unfortunately, the mayor is unable to make this event, and all of the other trustees are not here. Oh, you're Bob Priggy? Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. So right now, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our MC, Darius Robinson, and he will conduct the program moving forward. Thank you all very much for attending our event.
At this time, we would like to ask John Kunkel to come up and do the Black History Month proclamation.
Whereas much of Hanover Park's honor, strength, and stature can be attributed to the diversity in cultures and traditions that are celebrated by the residents of this great village. Whereas African Americans have played a significant role in the history of this nation's economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development, while working tirelessly to maintain and promote their culture and history. And whereas, as a result of their determination, hard work, intelligence, perseverance, African Americans have made valuable and lasting contributions to our community, achieving emotional success in all of societies, including business, education, politics, science, and arts. And whereas in 1976, Black History Month was formally adopted to honor and affirm the importance of Black African American history throughout our American experience, which goes back thousands of years and includes some of the greatest, most advanced and innovative societies in our history that we can draw inspiration from. And whereas Black African Americans History Month is a time for all Americans to remember the stories and teachings of those who helped build our nation, took a stance against prejudice to build lives of dignity, opportunity, and advance the cause of civil rights and strengthen families and communities. And whereas during Black African American History Month, all Americans are encouraged to reflect on the past successes and challenges of African Americans and look to the future to continue to improve society. so that we may live up to the ideals of freedom, equality, and justice. Now therefore, I, Rodney S. Craig, Mayor of the Village of Hanover Park, do hereby claim February 2024 to be Black History Month in the Village of Hanover Park, Illinois, and encourage all residents to join in honoring the many contributions made by African Americans by attending the Black History Month presentation hosted by the Sister City Committee today at noon in this room. Dated this first day of February 2024.
At this time, we will transition into the Black National Anthem. Herb Porter would lead us with Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Would y'all stand, please? Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. Stormy the road we trod, bitter the chasing blood, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat and not a weary feet, come to the place for which our parents sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading a path through the blood of the Scion. Now from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is fast. God of the
I just want to say that in looking at Black history, we must look at it not to be debated, not to be argued as to the relevance of it or the importance of it, because truly it is all of that. But Black history is our gift to America, and it must be viewed as our gift to America, just as we've gifted America with all of the scientific achievements and with the inventions and with the advancements in music, blues and jazz and gospel, as we've contributed in politics and society in all of those levels. That is our gift. And so we offer Black history as our gift to America, because as you look through the American story, there is no American story without the Black history. From the very beginning of the American story, Black history is present. From the fall of Crispus Attucks at the beginning of the American Revolutionary War, all the way through the inception of this land that we call America. You can't recount or you can't go over any of those accomplishments or any of those events throughout history without acknowledging the relevance and the importance of Black history. So I just want to just say that in looking at where we stand today with some of the discussions that are going on about whether we should teach African American history at certain levels or whether our students should be exposed to certain aspects of African American history, I say you can't deny that. You can't ignore that. You can't walk around that, because you can't teach American history without including African American history. And so with that, I just want to say to all of you, thank you so much for coming. It is truly an honor and a pleasure that out of the different events and the different places that you could be, you chose to be here with us. And we are so grateful for your attendance and for your coming. And we're really excited about our speaker today, the Dr. Reverend Otis Moss, who will be introduced by our chairperson. But once again, thank you for coming, and please note that we give you African American history as our gift. It is our gift, and we hope that you received it in the manner in which it's presented. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, at this time, I would like to introduce Diasha Sago. She's going to do a praise dance for us. Welcome, Diasha.
I've been walking with my face turned to the sun. Weight on my shoulders, a bullet in my gun. Oh, I got eyes in the back of my head, just in case I have to run. I do what I can when I can, while I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my bones. Early in the morning, before the sun begins to shine, we're gonna start moving towards that separating line. salvation. And I'll fight with the strength that I got until I die. So I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. And I know what's around the bend might be hard to face 'cause I'm alone. And I just might fail, but Lord knows I'll try. Shine stars fill up the sky. Stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Do you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. I hear freedom calling, calling me to answer. Gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel it in my bones. I go to prepare a place for you. I go to prepare a place for you. I go to prepare a place for you. I go to prepare a place for you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
That was amazing. Let's give it up one more time for Diasha. At this time, we would like to bring up Michael Childress from the DuPage County NAACP.
He's also a member of the DuPage County Board, so we're very proud to have him, the first African-American to serve on that DuPage County Board. So he's part of Black history right here today.
Thank you, Herb. I'm excited to be here and extremely honored. This is an amazing place. Hanover Park looks like the community. I mean, when you look at the diversity of this community, it is amazing. The city council looks like the community. It is probably one of the most diverse city councils in all of DuPage and probably all of Chicago and maybe in the nation. I think every nationality from African Americans to Hispanics to you name it, Herb, it's on your city council. And I'm always really proud and pleased whenever I come. Speaking of which, even the first Nigerian elected official just walked in the door. So that just tells you, and she's a trustee here in Hanover Park. I won't stand long, but again, I do want to give honor and respect to this community. they say I'm the president of the DuPage County NAACP, but this room is full of Herb is on our executive committee. Eve is on our executive committee, and I've always relied on her for great counsel. Whenever I need advice on something, I know he's only a phone call away. His daughter, their daughter, is going to be, she is right now the first African-American female judge in DuPage County also, so we're talking history. Can we give that up for them? And with the upcoming election, she's going to win that, and I'm so proud of her and so proud of the Porter family. If you look to my right and your left, you can see just what this community has done right here on the wall here. And if you look in the cabinets, it's just an amazing things that they're doing in this community. So with that, I will have a seat and enjoy the rest of the festivities. But again, I live right down the road here in Bloomingdale, and we talk sister cities, but I always tell Herb that Bloomingdale is also a sister city of Hanover Park too, so we come I'm 10 minutes away, so thank you very much.
At this time, we like to bring singer Frankie Malfalsi to perform Rise Up.
You're broken down and tired, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe. And I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll bring the world to its feet. Move mountains, bring it to its feet and move. Mountains, and I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, rise unafraid. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. And I'll rise up, high like the waves. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. When the silence isn't quiet, and it feels like it's getting hard to breathe, and I know you feel like dying, but I promise we'll bring the world to its feet. Move mountains, bring it to its feet and move mountains. And I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I'll rise up, and I'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you. All we need is hope, and for that we have each other, and for that we have each other. We will rise and I'll rise up, rise like the day. I'll rise up, in spite of the ache. I will rise 1,000 times again, and we'll rise up high like the waves. We'll rise up in spite of the ache. We'll rise up, and we'll do it 1,000 times again. For you, for you, for you, for you.
We'll introduce our keynote speaker.
It's me again. I am just totally thrilled and excited to have our keynote speaker, Dr. Reverend Otis Moss III, come in to our busy city. He's from the South Side, or Beverly, and to speak a word into our hearts and tell us a little about our history and just explain, you know, where we are today. And I'm just going to read his bio right quick. Senior pastor of Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago, Illinois. Dr. Otis Moss III is a preacher, activist, and author. Over the last 2 decades, Dr. Moss has practiced and preached a black theology that's unapologetically called attention to the problems of mass incarceration, environment justice, and economic inequality. A third-generation warrior for civil and human rights, Dr. Moss is committed to preaching a prophetic message of love and justice, which he believes were inseparable companions that formed the foundation of the gospel of Jesus Christ. This very touchstones are taken up in the latest book project, Dancing in the Dark, Spiritual Lessons for Thriving in Turbulent Times, released in November 2022. A native of Cleveland, Ohio, Dr. Moss is an honor graduate of Morehouse College, woohoo, and earned a Master's of Divinity, good Lord, from Yale Divinity School, and a Doctorate of Ministry from Chicago Theological Seminary. Dr. Moss has a passion for preaching and exercising his homiletic, no, I said that wrong, muscles as a professor of homiletics at McPhee, what is that? What is it? McAfee. Only you guys know that. People, I had that trouble before. McAfee. School of Theology at the Mercer University. In his role, Dr. Moss is positioned to help us and coming preachers build and strengthen their own preaching ministries. The work and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the pastor ministry of his fathers, Dr. Otis Moss Jr. of Cleveland, Ohio, are fundamental in this spiritual formation. So I just want everybody in here to know that I love my Pastor Moss. He is one of the most awesomest preachers, teachers around the city of New York, Chicago, and I'm going to take it to the world. So I present to you our Pastor Moss.
First, I want to say thank you to Sister Fowler for allowing me to be a part of this conversation as you celebrate African American history, history during this time period that started out as a week that was literally by a person by the name of Carter G. Woodson to celebrate the work of Frederick Douglass along with Abraham Lincoln. It was that week to celebrate their birthdays, and then it was expanded to talk about the broader contributions of people of African descent. I'm grateful to be out here at Hanover. I missed the exit twice coming out here, so I've seen a lot of Illinois on my way out here. So my apologies, but it is absolutely a delight to be with you on this day, really talking about a subject that I love, absolutely love talking about, and that is about African and African American history. Hidden history, history that we don't talk about, that builds so much of who we are, not realizing the foundation of what America is rooted in the power, the creativity, the imagination, and the faith, and the resilience, and the resistance of people of African descent. I begin our conversation today by lifting up an Afro-Mexican poet, a woman by the name of Anita Scott Coleman, who migrated in the 1920s from the hills of central Mexico to New Mexico and then eventually to Harlem, New York, where she became a colleague of someone many of you have heard of by the name of Langston Hughes. They were writing poetry together during what was known as the Harlem Renaissance. And it was Anita Scott Coleman. She was writing about the resilience of people of African descent, created this beautiful poem entitled Portraiture. And I changed just one little word in reference to the poem, but when I first read it several years ago in a collection of poetry by Kevin Young, who serves as one of the curators of the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. It's 250 years of African American poetry. If you ever have the opportunity to read it, it will take you from Phyllis Wheatley to it ends out with a poem that speaks about Herb Kent, who was a DJ in Chicago. It's a beautiful collection. But Anita Scott Coleman says this about black people. She says, "Black people are the tall trees that remain standing in a forest after a fire. Flames strip their branches. Flame scorches their limbs. Flames reach and scorch and sear their trunks, but yet stand these trees, for their roots are thrust deep in the earth. Black people are the tall trees that remain standing in a forest after a fire. The tall trees that we know as people of African descent, but yet their contribution to the American project has been hidden because of a peculiar virus in America that we call racism. I would call it not COVID-19, but COVID-16-19, a particular virus that has hidden and continues to mutate on several levels by saying that there is one particular group of people that we should hide contributions from, and we should not even examine the kind of work and witness that they have provided for the development of what we call the American Project. It is W.E.B. Du Bois who said about the American Project, he says these words. He says, "This is the yet-to-be United States of America, that we are a continuing, developing group, community, that continues to include and live up to the ideals of this nation." And I like that idea, the yet to be, because we cannot be a United States of America if we only lift up 40 to 50% of the history of this country. Or better yet, if we could put it even this way, if we only have a portion of our history and refuse to face the totality of our history, we will walk around as ignorant fools who will continue to repeat the history of our past. And I would say, as Anita Scott Coleman says, that black people are the tall trees that remain standing in a forest after a fire. So here we are, Hanover Park, a city that has made a connection with West Africa, specifically the Cape Coast of Ghana. Now, that may just seem as a ceremonial connection, but one must understand that before we even understand today what we call the global economy, that Ghana, the West African region, was a part of the building of what we consider to be the global economy of the ancient period in human development. So let me give you a few things before we even get to a modern understanding of history. There on the shores of West Africa was an empire that began around the 3rd century known as the Ghanaian Empire, mostly of people who spoke what was known as the Mandi language. And this empire coalesced in the region of what we would consider to be Ghana and the Ivory Coast and part of the Gambia and Senegal, and stretched into what was called the Sahara. And at the height of this empire, in and around the 9th century, I believe it was, you had the Ghanaian Empire was the holders of what we would call the gold trade in the ancient tradition. It was people who were out of the Muslim traders, the Berbers of the northern portion of Africa, would come down to Ghana, and they would bring salt, and as a result, the Ghanaians would then provide gold. That gold would make its way all the way to spaces that we know today as Yemen and Iran and Iraq, and then traders would take that same gold and it would make its way to India. That there was a global trade between West Africa, Yemen, and India, we're talking in the 9th century. That when Arabic scholars were writing about the region, they said that the only way that empires and governments could develop is you had to negotiate with the people from Ghana. They are the basis of the economy, the world's developing economy during that time period. Now, it was in and around, I believe, about the 11th century where Ghana then begins to move in decline, and then another empire begins to rise. That empire was brought together by a gentleman by the name of Sunjata, what today we would call Songhai Mali and Songhai Empire. And after Sunjata's reign, there was a gentleman who decided to make a trip to Mecca by the name of Mansa Musa. Mansa Musa was the wealthiest man in all of human history. If you put Jeff Bezos and the rest of them together, they still would not have the amount of money as Mansa Musa. He traveled from West Africa to Mecca, they said with almost 500 people in tow. Because, he had to have, literally bring his house with him when he made his way to Mecca. And the people had never seen anything like it. He was bringing not only gold and silver and rubies, but the currency of West Africa, it would be shocking to some, were known as cowrie shells. And these cowrie shells they were bringing and saying that I owe you X amount of dollars. And the world was absolutely blown away by this man who traveled across the Great Sea. Now, some will say, what do you mean the Great Sea? He was on a boat? No, the Great Sea at that time was called the Sahara. They considered to be water and the desert pretty much a space that if you went out there by yourself, you were not coming back home. And they called it the Great Sea. And here you have this man who was considered to be the wealthiest man in all of human history. Scholars have been trying to calculate about how much his wealth was. And there is one scholar that calculates that he might have had the wealth of $1 trillion because he was the controller of pretty much all of the precious metals in the ancient world. And so Mansa Musa, moving from Ghana into Mansa Musa, and then from that time period, again, this connection with Hanover Park, you were connected with West Africa. You then have the rise of one of the great universities in the world during that time period, a place called Timbuktu. An actual place. Some people actually think it's some strange outpost and was just kind of made up in someone's mind. It's an actual place, still in existence today, where you had hundreds upon hundreds of scrolls written in Arabic that gave the history of the region, but also if you wanted to study architecture, if you wanted to understand about mathematics, or if you wanted to understand astronomy, those scrolls were found at Timbuktu. So now Hanover Park has a connection with the ancient trading tradition of Ghana, connection to Mali and Mansa Musa. So when we talk about black history, it is important that we do not close the idea of black history as beginning in 1619. Because when we close it as only in 1619, I heard Dr. Hilliard put it this way, it is called the 1619 or the 400-year outlook of history, where we see people of African descent only from the lens of enslavement, as if there was nothing before. Now, I may upset a few people here, but if you really want to understand, here I am as a minister, you understand the totality and the fullness of African-American history, African history, and people of African descent, there's this really interesting book to check out. And if you find it in every hotel. It's called a Bible. And from Genesis to Revelation, you have people of African descent throughout that book. I said, where do you find them? Is there a book about the African presence in the Bible? I said, you don't need the African presence. Just start with Genesis and start reading. Because the idea of blackness does not come about in the world until the late 1600s. That people were seen as not only people of color, but they were defined by their language, better known as ethnicity. Even the idea of Africa did not exist in the way that it does today. Let me share something with you. I was in Israel and Palestine in October. I literally came back to the United States on October 6th. And there were people at Trinity sending me notes about, are you okay? I'm like, what do you mean you're okay? I got off the plane. I found out what was going on. I had no idea. It was absolutely fascinating. But here is the thing, that up until 1917, the area that we call the Middle East, prior to that, under the Ottoman Empire, was called Northeast Africa. The only reason that it's called the Middle East, there was a British cartographer living in London who wanted to travel to Japan, and he was trying to figure out the route to Japan. He said, if I go from London and I stop in Jerusalem, I will be in the middle of my eastern journey to Japan. So he then marked on his map, this is the Middle East. And since then, we have been calling an area, it doesn't make sense to call it the Middle East. We don't call anything, it's like you just lifted it out and called it the Middle East. An area that the Ottoman Empire said, this is Northeast Africa. Even the way in which we frame our understanding of what we know as Africa doesn't make sense because we define Africa out of a colonial imagination. An imagination from the Berlin Conference in the late 1800s and said, well, you know, the French, you all can have, we'll give you what is called Côte d'Ivoire. We'll give you the Ivory Coast. And the British, oh, you take Nigeria, the Gold Coast over here in Ghana. Everything was cut up. And then they said, you know what, we will define the spaces on the other side of what we today call the Suez Canal. We'll keep on calling that the Middle East. Now think about it. The Suez Canal separates one side of a nation or a country with another side. And if you remove the Suez Canal, normally we would not even define a particular region to say that, oh, this is a whole other continent and no other region. No, not at all. The Suez Canal, which cuts through in many ways, defining what, according to colonial imagination, this side, this is Africa. The other side is not. It's the Middle East. It's a peculiar and strange thing when we operate out of a colonial imagination. Let me give you another example. I'm going to give you all a test. Can I give a test right now? I'm going to give you a real quick test, geography test. Someone name the continents for me, please. Name a continent. Someone. You can. North America, South America, Africa. Okay, that's good. Okay. Asia, Australia, Antarctica. What else? Someone said Europe? Okay, what's the definition of a continent? A continent must be what? A landmass with what? Surrounded by water. Is Europe a landmass surrounded by water? No, it's a peninsula, essentially. But because someone defined what a continent was, they included themselves in reference to what a continent is. So we even have our framing. When you look through this colonial lens, we frame things in a particular way. For example, you've heard the term sub-Sahara Africa. Has anybody heard the term, Canadian or America or something like that? No, we don't use that term except when dealing with a particular community. The colonial lens. When we look at the world through the ancient, or not ancient, but the colonial lens, it shifts our understanding of the world. The ancient world was defined by ethnicity. It was defined by your language. It was not defined by color. There was no such thing as whiteness in the ancient world. It didn't exist. The first question they asked is, where are your people from? That was the first question. Then they wanted to know, what language do you speak? Where are you from? And then from there, we can build relationships. In the American project, beginning in 1619, and then later on moving as a result in 1676 of something known as the Bacon Rebellion, we had the introduction of the idea of race in America. Why is that? Well, up until that time period, you will read literature and it will speak about people who were African, who might have been indentured or might have been enslaved, or you read about European indentured servants of a variety of ethnicities. But something happened in Virginia that introduced race in a particular way. It was known as the Bacon Rebellion. That a group of Africans, along with indentured servants, they got together and they said, you know what? The gentleman who owns that big house over there, he's the real issue, not us. So they got together for a year. And so at that moment, race laws were written into the Virginia Constitution. Meaning that there is a difference between, they did not see any difference between a person of African descent or someone who is from Poland or someone who is from Ireland or from Germany. It was based on class, not based on some arbitrary idea of biology just made up by someone. So all of a sudden, these laws come into place in places like Virginia, and they sweep all across the South, stating that this group can live here, or this group cannot live here. For example, the first 2 Africans to arrive in the United States, a person by the name of Antonio, who comes on that first wave of those ships of about 20-odd Africans that land on the coast of Virginia. And then he marries a woman by the name of Mary, and they get together. And because they were African, and there was no restriction in terms of where they could move and grow and develop, these 2 people, this couple, was able to amass over 700 acres of land. As a result of that 700 acres of land, if they were able to maintain that acreage, they would have been considered the wealthiest family in Virginia and Maryland today. But when certain laws were then instituted, Antonio and Mary lost their land. As a matter of fact, their children were removed from their land, and they essentially became refugees in a country that did not see them as fully human. Understanding this basis and these ideas is critical for our understanding of how our country has formed and how we function even today. And so that idea of Mary and Antonio owning land and the danger of black people owning land continued to linger throughout the South. There were always free black people who owned land, especially during the antebellum period. It was challenging and difficult, but nonetheless, they existed. We could find that all throughout the historical record. But it was after emancipation that things radically changed. That after emancipation, you had one group that was upset that it was out of power, better known as the Confederates. You know, they wanted to go back and make America great again. That's the way the Confederates functioned. They wanted America a certain way. They believed that there was a group that was in power and there was a group that should not have power. But then there was another group that wanted to include, as more immigrants were coming to the United States. People were coming from Asia, and people were coming where now there was a shift in terms of the boundaries of the United States because of the Louisiana Purchase. That there was another group of people that didn't quite, they said, they don't fit, they're not white. Who are they? They're Cajun, that's who they are. They're Creole, they're different than us. Along with the indigenous population and those who had been living in the southwestern portion of the United States. Please, never tell someone who is Latinx to go back to their country, because they should tell you, you need to leave mine. Because the southwestern portion of the United States was a part of their nation. As a result of fights and treaties and things of that nature, it shifted. That's why we call it New Mexico. Some people don't even think about the simplicity of what we do that is right there in our history is so much. So something happens in the United States that affects us dramatically. We know it as the Civil War. And after the Civil War and the Emancipation Proclamation that, again, Abraham Lincoln was forced to do it. If it had not been for people like Frederick Douglass and the pressure upon Lincoln from abolitionists, black and white, especially from the Quaker faith community, to say that in order to keep this nation together, you are going to have to free this group of people. Because the South created this kind of compromise where they were gaining power in a particular way. It was known as the 3/5 compromise. They said, now, black people are not human beings, but since I've got 200 slaves, can I count them as 3/5 of a person just so that I can have more representation in Congress and Senate? And since we have an electoral system, I want to make sure that we have enough electorates in order that we might shift the balance of power. It was a compromise in reference to who would be president. Even our electoral system is rooted in the antebellum ideas of one group, the agrarian culture of those who were taking cotton and textiles, with those who, with the developing industrial North, they were at odds with each other. All of that happens. And as a result of the Civil War, which, let me just say this, it's just real controversial. This is incredibly controversial. I hope I will not get put out of this because for saying this, the Civil War was a result of slavery. That's one of the reasons that people fall. I know that some people don't know that, but I just want to make sure that, I'm saying that here. If you want to put me out, it's okay. That pretty much about 99.9% of all historians agree with that. I know that politicians are rather confused about that about now. But as a result of this, you then have the period that we know as Reconstruction. Reconstruction had an incredible backlash because people who were formerly in power in the South wanted their power back. And so there was a compromise that was made with President Jackson to allow the Confederates to get power again. One of the things that the Confederates did in reference to receiving power, not only in terms of passing laws that we now know today as the Jim Crow laws and what we know as the peonage laws, one of the first things that happened, they started elevating individuals who were involved in the Civil War. So all through the South, you can find monuments of people who essentially said that I will be a traitor to this country. In no other nation on the planet have we ever had over 1,000 monuments to a group that specifically attempted to turn over the democracy. But so that was just one aspect. But then one of the other pieces that during the Reconstruction period that happens that is quite interesting and extraordinary. During Reconstruction, you first have the complete, utter change in terms of the representation throughout the South. You have black men who begin to become a part of Congress and the Senate. You have schools that are developing. And then you have spaces along the South of extraordinary economic development. 4 million black people had been freed, and many of them were incredibly skilled. So you have places like Tulsa, Oklahoma, that then begin to develop what we know as Black Wall Street. We then later have a place known as Sweet Auburn, Auburn Avenue, in Atlanta, Georgia. All these people who were formerly enslaved, they begin to etch out all these spaces. They create churches, they create businesses, and they have mutual aid societies. Some were called the Masons, where they would bring their money together, and they would, because they couldn't go to certain banks, they became the bank for the community. And then they established these banking institutions all throughout the South. It was the most extraordinary growth of any community in the history of civilization. Let me say it again. A population that was roughly 90% illiterate within 30 years was now 70% literate and had built their own schools, built their own businesses. This is right after slavery. More accumulation of wealth along with the expansion of the black farming system. If you wanted to eat, you had to sit down and have a conversation with somebody who was black, because they were the ones who understood the agriculture and were doing the incredible work all throughout the South. So this happens just in Reconstruction right after the Civil War. It's extraordinary, but a compromise was struck. And as a result of that compromise, and along with what we would call today misinformation, propaganda, because the propaganda machine begins to turn in the turn of the century with the creation of a film called Birth of a Nation. That film, Birth of a Nation, was screened at the White House, and it made a new group in America, a domestic terror group called the Ku Klux Klan, the hero of American society. It's said in the film, it was based on a book called The Klansman, that the Klan had to be organized because there were these black men who were just running around, who were raping other people. And so therefore, we had to create the KKK in order to keep black people in their place. As a result of that, all of these laws began to appear all throughout the South. One law was the peonage laws. If you're not familiar with the peonage laws, it was the laws that actually rebuilt the Birminghams and the Atlantas, all these places that had been burned during the South. And what is a peonage law? Simply as this. If you, any of us, if we were living during that time period, let's say the post-Reconstruction, then during the backlash after Reconstruction when the compromise had been given with Jackson, President Jackson, if I was walking down a street in Montgomery and I didn't have papers that said where I worked, I could be taken into jail. I would then go before a judge, and a judge would say this: well, since you were caught without papers, we're going to go easy on you. We're going to let you work off your debt for the next 9 years for what eventually becomes U.S. Steel in Birmingham. So there was an incentive to essentially re-enslave 500,000 black people at the turn of the century. 500,000 were put into the peonage system, what we now call sharecropping, but they were leasing convicts to companies without pay, and they would say you're paying off your debt to the state. Birmingham, that had been burned down, Atlanta, all your cities through the South, they were rebuilt by this labor. So the South rises from its ashes again on the backs of what we know as slavery. But it's got a different name now. It is called peonage. That peonage system then expands where we know as sharecropping. I'll have you work on my land. You're really good at working land. But you're going to be, it's my land, and every year, there's a leasing contract. And you can be let out of this contract when you pay off your debt. Well, here's the thing. This is how you work it out. You make sure that the person who is leasing the land, one, can never look at your books. I am from that system. My family is. And my grandfather was a sharecropper in Georgia. And he refused to work for any of the families in a space known as Troup County, Georgia, near LaGrange, Georgia. Of any of the families that specifically mistreated black people. And what he did, he decided to work for a black family. And they had a cooperative to say that we own this land jointly and work together. But when that family passed away, there was a white family that came in and used a black person as a front person to say that, oh, we'll keep the same deal, just a few changes. If you sign this signature right here, you can continue your sharecropping. My grandfather was smart enough to realize that this was a peonage move. And so he said, no, I will take my 5 children and I will go and find land somewhere else to work. A very brave thing to do in the 1940s. The peonage system, 500,000 people. 500,000 people who were literally re-enslaved. That peonage system ends in America in about 1973. So this is not something ancient history. It ends in 1973, but then a new peonage system comes in place after that. Richard Nixon, at the time, believes in this idea of, hey, we need to have a war on crime. And that begins the privatization of jails. And that privatization, again, specifically goes after the poorest of the poor. So that corporations, you then lease their work out. Many of you do not even know that when you get a call center, sometimes you're getting a prison. call centers now have been leasing and finding that one of the best ways to keep profits high is to lease out the labor that you can receive from some space where people are incarcerated. That period changed everything. So you had, right after slavery, during the Reconstruction period, the most amazing growth in the history of human civilization, a shift that has never been recorded of a people who were enslaved, denied the ability to read, to build schools, all of that, of self-agency, and all of a sudden, all over the South, you have these incredible communities popping up. But one in particular in Tulsa, Oklahoma, something happens. There's what is known as the Black Wall Street. As a matter of fact, Tulsa, Oklahoma has a connection to Chicago, Illinois. The owner of the Stratford Hotel, J.B. Stratford, his grandson now lives in Chicago. Some of you may know him. His name is John Rogers, owner of Ariel Investments. That entire hotel was burned down in 1921, all because there was a gentleman by the name of Richard Rowland. He was an elevator operator. And a white woman by the name of Sarah Page came onto the elevator and tripped. She tripped. She was falling. And it was Richard who reaches out just to keep her from falling. She screams. And at that moment, the word goes out that Richard had tried to rape Sarah. People in Tulsa, Oklahoma then decide that they are going to destroy what was known as the Black Wall Street, the Greenwood community in Tulsa. 10,000 people then begin to battle and march into Tulsa, but they don't just come in guns blazing. They actually get airplanes and they bombed Tulsa, Oklahoma. $36 million in terms of economy was destroyed. 10,000 people were left homeless. And to this day, there's not been really reparations done for this region. But the way that the Spirit of God works, J.B. Stratford lost his hotel, but his grandson is one of the wealthiest black men in America today. He had learned from not only his parents, but his grandparents. But J.B. Stratford also ends up mentoring afar, I would say, another person by the name of A.G. Gaston, who builds the Gaston Motel and Hotel because he wanted to be like Stratford. A.G. Gaston works with the NAACP and then another group called the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, specifically Reverend Fred Shuttlesworth, and he becomes a funder of the work of Martin Luther King Jr. to desegregate Alabama. Another person who then is connected to what happens in Tulsa is a person by the name of Alonzo Herndon, who comes out of that, his parents come out of that enslavement period. He moves from rural Georgia into Atlanta. He had seen what happens in Tulsa, and he wants to do the same thing. So Alonzo Herndon opens 2 barbershops. One barbershop for black people, and another barbershop downtown for white people. You say, well, what is fascinating about that? Well, this is so cool. I love this story. The shop he opened downtown, he specifically opened near the business district. And he would just sit and listen to all of the lawyers and business people and politicians. And he would go back and write down everything they were saying. And he used the information to found what was known as the Atlanta Life Insurance Company, which becomes one of the biggest black businesses in all of the South. He then realizes, because he had been influenced by J.B. Stratford in Tulsa, Oklahoma, he then says, I want to take my money. I can't be on the front line like Dr. King and others, but I want to put a fund on the side that when anybody ever is put in jail, Atlanta Life Insurance we make sure you have a lawyer, and we pay your bail. So every time someone during the movement went to jail, Alonzo Herndon was the person who ends up paying to ensure that they get out on bail. That everybody has a space that they can serve. The beauty of this, that even with this backlash, the resilience and power and creativity and faith of people of African descent continues to rise. Now I have to jump back a little bit, because there's a story, whenever I talk about Black history, I always have to tell one of my favorite people in Black history. It's a gentleman by the name of Robert Smalls. I absolutely love Robert. As a matter of fact, I even got a watch that was made that has Robert Smalls' face on it. I love this man so much because the story is so incredible. It speaks about the resilience and the power of people of African descent. Robert Smalls, who was born an enslaved African in South Carolina, Beaufort to be exact. He recognizes when his son, Robert Jr., is born in Charleston, South Carolina, and he marries his wife. He says, you know, I do not want Robert Jr. to have to grow up in this system. So Robert Smalls and his wife planned the most daring escape to freedom in the history of all escapes. Now Henry Boxcar, you know, he's got a great escape, but this one is better. This is better because Robert Smalls plans with his wife that they are going to steal a Confederate warship and sail to freedom. I'm telling you, this story is better than Oceans 8, 9, 10, 11. I'm telling you, this thing is good. This is really good. And so what he understood is that there was an arrogance and an ignorance in reference to racism. Because in the South, and this is during the time period of what is the beginning of the Civil War, black people could clean a Confederate warship. You could fix a Confederate warship. You could even drive it, but you just couldn't be the captain. You could do all the work on the ship. And so what Robert Smalls decided to do, that he would commit to memory every single Confederate war code. All of the hand signals that would be done in order for you to leave the harbor, all the special signals that would be given from one ship to another. He was just listening in. They call it ear hustling. He was just ear hustling the whole time, trying to act like, oh, I'm just so ignorant, I don't know nothing. And he is committing everything to memory. But he also knew this, that the so-called captain and the XO, they like to drink. You know, they like, you know, not just, they like that brown. They like to drink, okay? They're the drinking folks. And so they would, usually in the evening, they would like to go to the red light district. Now, if you're younger, you don't know what the red light district is, please ask somebody older around you, all right? That's as far as I'm going with that one. So every evening would go to the red light district. And so they knew that they've been drinking, they're going to the red light district, they won't come back until the morning. So with the evening that they went to get drunk and go to the red light district, Robert Smalls then brought 11 other Africans on the ship, his family, his wife, and several other people, and they decided that they were going to sail to freedom. Now it was still dark out. It must have been about 4 a.m. Robert Smalls puts on a Confederate outfit, stands on the bow of the ship, and they begin to sail the ship out of the Charleston harbor. All that is lighting the ship is the silhouette. Because of a full moon, they can see the outline of Robert Smalls. And there's a harbor master, and you have to know the codes in order to leave the harbor. If you don't give the right code, you get shot immediately. So Robert Smalls does this thing. I don't know what he did. I have no idea. I don't know what he did. But the harbor master goes like this, and they sail out of the harbor. It gets better, y'all. So there's a blockade because of the Civil War. Any Confederate ship that sails out of the harbor into what is considered to be Union territory will be fired on immediately. The ship that Robert Smalls liberated, I don't like to say stolen, he liberated it. Anyway, that's a whole other thing. You'll get the joke later. There is called the Planter. There's a Union ship that has been stationed to look for any Confederate ships and fire on them immediately. They see the Planter coming out, And at that moment, the captain said to the crew to train the guns on this ship right now. And they point the guns at the ship, and they begin the count. And Robert Smalls from a distance sees that there are guns trained on the ship. They don't know what to do. It is Mrs. Smalls, Sister Smalls. She says, well, y'all don't know what to do. Go find a white flag right now, and let's run it up the flagpole. They run the white flag up the flagpole, and something happens that just changes everything. They run the flag up, but a fog has come in, and they can't see the flag. So there they are counting, about to blow the ship out of water. 1, 2, before they say 3, just like on cue, the sun comes out and burns off the fog. They see the white flag and they say, halt! And then they board the ship. I wish I could have been there. They board the ship, and the soldiers, Union soldiers, look everywhere. They're looking for Confederate soldiers. They're looking for white men, and they don't find any. And Robert Smalls, the story goes, takes his son, holds his son up to the sky, and gives a prayer, and then says to the captain of the ship, the Union ship, I give this ship to Abraham Lincoln for the fight for freedom. Now, I wasn't there, but I could imagine that every soldier had their mouth on the ground. What? I mean, they couldn't believe it because of all the propaganda that they had been given about people of African descent. So Robert Smalls is greeted as a hero when he goes north, gives this ship, and also, guess what? Gives every Confederate war code. So now the Union Army knows all the codes that they're using, and the Confederacy is like, why are we losing the naval battles? Well, it's because of Robert Smalls. But then he moves to Philadelphia, but he joins the Union Army. He becomes the first African-American officer in the history of the U.S. military. But then he had a great love for education, and not only wanted his son educated, but his daughters. He sends his daughters to Europe, to London and to France to study. Because he says, you're not just to marry somebody. You are a person of worth, and I want you to be an educated woman so you don't have to depend on a man ever. Powerful. But then Sister Smalls and Robert Smalls decide to move back to South Carolina. They moved back to South Carolina. They made a lot of money in Philadelphia. They moved back to South Carolina and buy the plantation where he was held as a slave. You got to be a bad brother to do that. He buys the plantation and allows the mistress to live on the property. Not in the big house, small house, Airbnb in the back. Small. From there, he and his wife, they set up 4 schools for people of African descent because there were no schools for black children. So you had these private schools that were set up, and Robert Smalls set up some of those private schools. But then that still wasn't enough. He becomes one of the wealthiest men, not just black men, wealthiest man in South Carolina history. Still not enough. He says, I'm going to run for Congress, and he runs for Congress, and he wins. He becomes the representative to the state that held him in bondage. It gets better. He then realizes that there were certain people who were not allowed in education. Robert Smalls puts together the legislation that today we still experience, the legislation that Robert Smalls wrote back then. He puts together the legislation that we now know as the public school system. Every child who goes to public school because of Robert Smalls. His name was written out of Southern history. It was at one point illegal to say his name, lest you could be lynched or worse. There was a joke that is stated by an interviewer of some formerly enslaved Africans. They said, you people, this is kind of funny how the interviewer says it, you people seem to love Robert Smalls. You think that he's God. And this elder man who had a quick wit said, he's still got time. He was beloved, is my point. And he did so much, but he was written out of the record because of the ignorance and the arrogance of the idea of race. There's so much in our history. And here we are in a point in American history where we are now banning books that have the name of Robert Smalls. We're banning books that have the poetry of Maya Angelou. We're banning books that have the words and the prose of Toni Morrison. We cannot become the country that we are supposed to become if we only know a portion of the history. It would be similar if you were traveling somewhere across the country and you had a map that only gave you 50% of the directions. At some point, you would be lost. But I believe that if we take hold of all of our history, whether it is tragic or whether it is triumphant, and look at it collectively, we will find something beautiful and create new possibilities for our future. I thank you for the time that you have given me today to be able to share the story about our community. Thank you. We do a Q&A, or am I done? Or a couple of questions? Or yeah, should we? A couple of questions? Yes. Yes. 5 minutes. Okay. We'll do a couple of questions. Oh, thank you. No questions? Oh, wow. Okay. Yes. Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There were from if memory serves me correctly, there were several hundred people who were injured. And I'm not sure the number. I want to say, I'll get the exact number, but there were quite a few people that were killed as a result. I know that there were 10,000 people homeless. They obliterated. I had the opportunity to go to the commemoration of Black Wall Street. The only building that is still left is the Vernon AME Church, which became a haven for people who were running from the massacre. They hid in the basement. And they've turned that basement into kind of a sacred space of where people were able to hide. They now have markers of all the places that were burned. And I had the opportunity to meet I want to say this was the daughter of the owner of what we would call today kind of a general store, was present, and she had, she'd been told about, all that had happened during that time period in 1921, and it was a terrifying thing and they also now have a memorial outside that they list the names of all the people who lost their property, and also the names of people who lost their lives. No, they were not. They built a highway over it. So now yes, on purpose. So when you go there, the district really is not there the way it should be. There is an overpass that literally cuts right through. I mean, this is amazing. That would be like putting a highway across the Smithsonian Museum to me. It's a sacred space that everybody should experience, and they put a highway there.
You mentioned the banning of books.
Yes.
And it brings to mind, I want to speak to the role now that we have some representatives from our libraries here, but the role that librarians and libraries have been put into in face of this and this assault on knowledge by the banning of books.
Libraries, I think, are one of the most important civic spaces that we have in our country. A space of learning, of safety. If I may give a little personal piece, I became a lover of jazz because of my sister, but also because of the library. My sister loved jazz music, and I wanted to learn about, when I was younger, this person who was this young guy playing jazz named Wynton Marsalis. And I went to the library, and for those of you who are younger, they have these things called records. They're like giant CDs, and they're real large CDs. And I went and got a record of Wynton Marsalis because of this library system and because of the joy that the librarians had. When we assault the library, when we ban books, we are headed to an autocratic, fascist state. Libraries are a space of freedom. Libraries are a space where everybody can come. Libraries are a space that even if you're homeless, I can come and search for a job when I can go to the library. Libraries are spaces with some of the best youth programs across the country. Libraries are central to democracy, the space where everyone can find a little bit about themselves, no matter where you are from. And the other thing is, I think one of the people who are great heroes in our nation are librarians. If you want to excite a librarian, just go and ask for a book. I mean, they will get so excited because, I mean, that's their passion. And ask for a specific type of book. I need a book that speaks about Latinx history. I want a book, I can tell, and they will go and they will do the research to find. I need a specific book that tells information about the time period when the railroads in the United States were created specifically by Asian people. I got you. I mean, that's what they do. They nerd out on this stuff. And when you restrict their ability to be able to, because they're teachers. That's what librarians are. They're teachers. You restrict their ability to be able to give children joy. There's nothing more painful than if you tell a librarian or someone who practices joy by seeing your joy. That's if you want a librarian excited, go back and say, that book you gave me? I mean, they're on cloud. My aunt was a librarian. That's why I'm speaking in this way. She was a part of the Librarian Cyrus's, and that's she was the historian of our family, and she would send me a book every single year for my birthday and for Christmas. I have those books today. I've given those books to my children. She was a blessing, and I have just a love and respect for people who are librarians, and I'm willing to do anything to fight to ensure that libraries and librarians are protected to be able to do their job so the next generation will be blessed by these incredible people who are called to do the work they do. Mm-hmm. Question? Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's only one that wasn't. That was Mound Bayou, Mississippi. And that was because of, well, there's two stories to it. One was one of the particular founders who was a part of the state legislature kind of worked out a deal. The other was, there's a story that a group of black women prayed around the circle of Mound Bayou, and the joke was that every time the Klan tried to ride a horse in there, they kept getting thrown off of it. They said because there was a prayer circle around the town. Both stories are great, but that's the only one that we know of that built kind of this economic foundation that in some form or fashion was not attacked. Beale Street, people don't even know, there was a huge, unbelievable riot that happened in Beale Street, where so many people were killed because of the economic power that was being built in Beale Street. In Atlanta, every area that you look, from Atlanta to Augusta to Savannah, you have the same space. South Carolina, we can go to every state throughout the South, and also spaces in the North. Let's not forget that too. But especially in the South, because you had a group that was put out of power, was threatened by black wealth. And during Reconstruction, remember, if you were a slave owner in 1861 and you turned around 60 years later and saw the guy on the plantation owns a hotel, you were ticked off. That's how fast the development was happening. And that's why I say it's the fastest development in human history of a group of people who were enslaved, denied, and then to see an absolutely extraordinary turnaround in 60 years has never, nations don't do that. You know, if you have all kinds of economic opportunity, it doesn't happen. But it happened here in the United States for a short period. Right behind you, had a question, yes? Yes, yes. You know, a great general history is by John Hope Franklin, From Slavery to Freedom. It's like a textbook. It will give you the information from different periods, and you'll have it all in one single volume, and it's considered to be a classic. Another is by someone from Chicago, Lerone Bennett, who used to be editor at Ebony Magazine. He's done several books. One is called Before the Mayflower, is also an absolute classic. And if you also want, he also has a great book on Abraham Lincoln called Forced into Glory, that's about Lincoln and Frederick Douglass's relationship. It's very good. Sure. Oh yeah, Gates got a great, anything that Doc does is always fantastic. Yes, sir. He said the impact of NAFTA in terms of American policy. Sure. Let me see if I can I'm going to give it real quick. Let me see if I can do it real fast. So many of you are familiar with the NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement that happened in the 90s. So the North American Free Trade Agreement was designed, quote unquote, to give free trade between the United States and Mexico, things of that nature. But in actuality, it was for agribusinesses that ended up actually undermining Mexican farms, essentially what happened. So in the United States, large farms are given subsidies, so they can they essentially overproduce. Before the North American Free Trade Agreement, you had all these wonderful independent farms in Mexico. These are family-owned farms. And, you know, whatever they're raising, let's just say corn, they're raising corn, they go into the store, they're selling their corn for, let's say, $1.50 a bushel or something of that nature. Here comes a North American Free Trade Agreement in the 90s, under the Clinton administration during the 90s. And it gives American companies permission to sell their surplus in Mexico. Well, what happens when you sell a surplus? Well, it's capitalism. So here you have farms that are selling $1.50 a bushel. Here comes American corn being sold at 50 cents a bushel. Well, guess what? You can't survive, can you? So what do the American companies do? Oh, they're so nice. They said, you know what? Since you're going out of business, we'll let you stay on the land. You can work for us. We'll give you a job. So all of a sudden, American companies begin to take over these small family farms in Mexico in the 90s. As a result of that, they remove some of the families on the farms, and some are able to stay. So those families begin to migrate to Mexico City. In the 90s, there is a swelling of population in Mexico City. So you go where the work is. So you go to Mexico, then you begin to move farther north. You move farther north in the United States, but guess what? You move to the United States, the same agribusinesses that promoted the North American Free Trade Agreement wanted to have a migrating population that did not have green card or citizenship to work where? We've got these, we want you to pick some grapes. We want you to work here. We don't want you to unionize. So the agribusinesses created this mass migration from Mexico into the United States to benefit themselves so they could circumvent essentially unionization. And then on one end, then give to candidates who then say horrible things about people who are coming across the border, but they want them to come across the border, but they don't want them to unionize, and they do not want them to be citizens because they can make money off of poor people who do not have rights. That all happened as a result of the North American Free Trade Agreement. That's the real short version. Okay, all right.
All right, let's give it up one more time for Dr. Moss. All right, we will transition with singer Frankie Monfils. She will perform "We Shall Overcome."
And lean on me.
Pardon?
And lean on me.
Oh, and "Lean on Me."
Thank you.
Is it a cappella?
If you know the song, please sing with me. I'm doing We Shall Overcome, and then We Shall Be All Right, We Shall Live in Peace, and back to We Shall Overcome.
All right, can we all stand and let's sing this together?
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome one day. We shall be all right. We shall be all right. We shall be all right. We shall be all right someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall over all right someday. Live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace. We shall live in peace someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall live in peace someday. One more, we shall overcome, everybody. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall Thank you.
We offer that song as a memorial to all of those who marched during the civil rights period of the 1960s and the early 70s. I know that there are some who say maybe we've moved on from We Shall Overcome, and certainly we have made significant progress, but I never think we're remiss for remembering the sacrifices, the blood and the sweat and tears that were shed by the civil rights leaders, the marchers, the civil rights warriors who took to the streets, and the John Lewises of the world who gave every last measure to ensure that we could gather in a room like this today and have this discussion with such an incredible speaker. And at this time, can you just give our esteemed speaker, Reverend Moss, just another round of applause? I don't know about you, but I thought I knew a lot, but I was educated today. You know, I was educated, informed, and entertained, and you don't know what a privilege it is to have such an esteemed speaker come to our humble town and our modest town and to deliver this. Sir, we are forever in your debt, and we're so grateful that you honored us with your words today. So thank you. That you can be seated. Frankie is going to sing another song for us. I want to get that queued up for.
I just want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to sing here. This has been a very, very great afternoon with a lot of information that I am kind of saddened by my school system that I didn't know. Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your hand, I'll help you carry on, for there'll come a time I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride. If I have faith, you need to borrow, for if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Call on me, brother, if you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I got a problem, I think you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong. I'll be your friend, I'll help you carry on, for there'll come a time I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Call on me, brother, if you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I got some problems, you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If you have a load you have to bear, so, so much, everybody. This has been a wonderful event.
Michael, stand up. Michael is our pianist there, our keyboard singer. Thank you, Michael. We appreciate you. All right. Well, we have reached the part of the program where we pass out, do the door prizes drawing, and just a note of thanks as well. And I think Herb has said it all, that we thank everyone for coming out and sharing our special event with us. We have a nice crowd. We appreciate that. I hope that his word just spreads out and permeates through your hearts and minds of some truth that we are not always told. And it's nice to hear the truth coming from a scholar such as Dr. Otis Moss. So, Dr. Moss, again, I say I love you and thank you so much for coming out. Thank you all. Now we're going to do a drawing, and if you get your tickets out, can I get someone up here to help me, please? Thank you.
No, I just want to use the person that's not affiliated with the city to pull the ticket. How about we use, Miss Janet? Yeah, oh, man, that works. Why don't you come on?
Did everyone get a ticket?
Well, everyone, I hope that you enjoyed the program, and this actually concludes the program. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it.